Welcome to a collegiate parent conversation about the transition to college. We have advice for parents and family members of first-year incoming college students and are very, very pleased to be joined today by three guests, all of whom contribute to Collegiate Parent's content library. So I'm so thankful to have you join me and just also really happy to see your faces. And I'm going to let you each say a word. We have Deborah Porter, Amy Baldwin, and Jennifer Sullivan. And so, Amy, let's start with you.
Sure. I am Amy Baldwin. I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas. I work at the University of Central Arkansas, where I'm the director of the Department of Student Transitions. So I have worked in a community college and a university setting over 25 years, working primarily with first-year students. And it's what I love to do, and hope I can contribute positively to our discussion today.
Thanks. How about you, Deborah?
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you guys. So I'm Deborah Porter. I live in Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. I'm a mom coach. I support moms that are overwhelmed in motherhood, trying to connect with the woman they were before having kids. We love our kids. They're amazing. But as women, we still have goals and dreams that we wanna accomplish. And so I work with moms to do that. And we've raised and put 3 children through college. So mine are all young adults and on their own and paying their own bills, which is the biggest raise you will ever get. But super excited to be here with everybody. Happy to see you guys.
Thanks. Jen?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Sullivan, based in southeastern Connecticut, and I've been an educator for about 18 years in both higher ed and K-12 schools. I'm currently an adjunct at the University of Connecticut, UConn, and I'm also a college life coach for both students and families, students with a variety of different disabilities. And I'm also excited to share that this September, I'll be publishing my first book. And it's a guide with some words of advice for students with disabilities and their families as they go through the transition to college.
That's so exciting. I cannot wait to read it and talk more about that. Thanks so much, Jen. So we thought we would just start today with some of the constants of the transition to college. So we are going to circle back and talk about what makes this year unusual. I mean, we all know what it is, but how that's going to add some layers of consideration and preparation for our families. But I thought that I would just love to hear from each of you something that you have to say about some of those constants about the transition and some of the most important things parents and students can be preparing for, some of those common stumbling blocks and challenges. And I think I'd love to start with Deborah.
Sure. So I think one of the things that students need to be aware of is the time management piece of what college is. It's very different than high school. It really requires a level of organization, but there are many different resources on campus for them to be able to get that. But I would say the first thing that really comes to mind for me is the time management piece.
And did you have some strategies as a mom that you worked with or found along the way with any of your children?
We did. We kind of started working on this in the high school years, knowing what was coming ahead. So we really worked hard on giving our kids autonomy and really allowing them to have to critically think through the things they were going to have to accomplish. As opposed to being the parent that stayed up all night with them to help them with the project they waited at the last minute for, or I've even known moms that have done those projects for their kids. We really allowed every grade they earned. And that was probably one of the better life lessons because their A was theirs and they were super proud of it. And if it wasn't an A, they clearly understood the things that they could have done better, maybe started sooner. So I would say one of the things is really starting with this kind of early, with autonomy and really allowing our children to begin critical thinking. I think if you're right up on heading into college, I would say to make use of all of the resources that are available on campus. There are campus counselors, you've got your professors you can meet with, which is a big one that can really support students. But those were some of the tips that we used.
And if you don't mind, I want to piggyback on that because those are excellent ideas to kind of get people ready. And Deborah, you kind of pointed to using their resources. And one of the things that I've coached a lot of students to do is asking for help. And we call them help-seeking behaviors, identifying when they need to find a resource on campus. And you're absolutely right, Deborah, that, you know, we want them to own the process, but also know that there are a lot of resources available and we expect them to connect with. So if they're struggling in a course, we want them to reach out to the professor or reach out to tutoring. If they're having some mental health issues, anytime I talk about our health clinic on campus and how good they are with counseling, students are usually like, oh, wow, I didn't know we had this available. And I didn't realize it was so easy to connect with. So definitely this fall, they're going to need those kind of support systems in place and know how to access them for sure.
Yeah, Jennifer, how about you?
Yeah, you know, I agree with both what Deb and Amy have said, and I would like to add, you know, in particular for students with disabilities, that making that connection right away within the first week of school, if possible, with the accessibility office or the disability support office. You know, I think it's important for students to know that they're going to need to own, you know, more of that process, as Amy was just talking about. And typically in high school, students, whether they've had a 504 plan or an IEP, sometimes those decisions and those plans have been made for them, or perhaps, you know, without them knowing. So really owning the disclosure process, the accommodations request process, all of those things in college can be a stumbling block sometimes. So that would be my recommendation for students. And my recommendation for parents, just kind of that is the same, no matter, you know, whether it's this year or in years past, is really to be patient. Sometimes, you know, because there is so much to balance and navigate in the first semester, sometimes parents will hope that their children will have it all together. Residentially, socially, academically, maybe doing laundry, medicate. Oh my gosh, there's just so much to navigate and to balance. Yeah. So really being patient, you know, with your child, and if they're excelling academically, but maybe need help remembering to shower and do laundry, that's okay. Because what I say to parents is, you know, your child may be struggling in an area that another parent wishes that their child, you know, could do or is doing well, and vice versa. So patient.
And I would add to that, adulting is a process, right? And even some of us who have a few more decades under our belt still struggle with some things. So, you know, I think you're absolutely right. That patience piece is a huge part of it, especially if they're coming straight from high school. 3 months is not enough time to get them up to speed on how to do everything.
That's a great point. Just quickly, I thought you mentioned academics. There are obviously a lot of differences between high school and college academics, and I wonder if there are, you know, a few quick tips or things for parents just to be aware of as their student makes that transition.
I'll be glad to jump in on that one. I think it also dovetails again with what we just talked about with time management and getting some help. All of those things are going to be essential to mastering the academic piece of it. But a lot of my students will tell me that the biggest surprise that they had coming from high school to college, even if they went to a rigorous high school or they had a lot of AP classes, the pace with which we cover material and the depth with which we expect students to master the material is a shocker. And so they, you know, whenever you had 18 weeks to cover half the book versus 15 weeks to cover the entire biology book, and it's 700 pages, plus all the lectures, plus all the labs, I mean, that's just one course. Students often are a little bit shell-shocked that we move so fast. And one of the things that I would suggest to them is, carve out that time to do the readings, to do the lectures, to go to class if we have class on campus, to do all of those things that may have been done for them in high school through teacher activities and things like that. They just need to find the time and actually commit to doing all of those things that they know that they need to do to master material and learn.
That's so good. All of that is so critical for students. I would add to that the idea of getting a mentor or connecting with an upperclassman, sometimes as a freshman, you're leaving high school as the big man on campus, right? You're the senior, but now you're coming into an environment where you're really starting all over again. So it's helpful to have an upperclassman or a graduate student or someone who could warn you about teachers and who might be a really good teacher. Not that any are bad, but sometimes for our own individual learning styles, sometimes just for the way that we process information, there can be a better match personality-wise for students. So for us, it was really important to encourage our kids to really connect with someone, not just the incoming freshmen and your buddies, but really to make an effort to connect with someone that's been there a little bit longer to kind of help you navigate some of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to something that Deb had mentioned earlier about time management, kind of tying into academics. So I find that coming to college, sometimes students are using tools in high school that are given to them, whether it's by their parents or by a teacher or a guidance counselor or a special education teacher maybe, but students may not have fully owned those tools. So a recommendation would be even to organize your space in your residence hall or in your dorm room. So for example, using whiteboards. I love recommending that students put whiteboards and also whiteboard calendars in their room. You can buy them for pretty inexpensively on Amazon. They stick to the wall. There's even magnetic whiteboard calendars that would stick to a mini fridge. You can use your phone, as an organizational and an executive functioning tool to keep track of assignments and due dates. So that would be a recommendation for students, is to find an organizational system before you leave high school, and to practice with that before you leave, so you have a system already in place to help organize those academics.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much. Amy, just before we move on to some of the other COVID-19 related things and a few other things, as someone who works with these first year students, I mean, you teach the class on that transition. Do you have some other sort of top tips for student success? And of course, you're also the parent of a college student, one already in college and one heading there this fall. So
yeah. So to add to, all of the ideas that we've shared are in my top list of what I ask students to do. Maybe another one that sometimes gets overlooked and is a little bit more enjoyable than managing your time and studying, is starting to explore the opportunities and experiences you have to get a better sense of what it is you want to do. And so I love to tell students to really enjoy the classes that they're taking. Go with some curiosity, especially if it's a class they're not sure about, like, I don't know what anatomy and physiology is going to be like. Or if it's, a new experience for them, to really kind of enjoy it. It's kind of hard to do whenever you're kind of stressed out, but it also can help you develop some sense of what you like and what you don't like. And through that, you can then start really kind of refining what you want to major in and perhaps what a career pathway is going to be. But sometimes we forget that just enjoying the journey is part of it. Because as I tell my son, who will be a freshman this fall, you're going to have 4 years of eating cafeteria food. It'll be open, 24/7, and you'll get as much as you want to eat. And then guess what? After you graduate, that doesn't happen anymore. So be sure to enjoy those times that you can be a true college student.
That's nice. Deborah, did you see your own children having some opportunities like that? Things that sort of lit them up or that they stumbled upon?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that electives are fantastic for that because it's a great way for them to begin to explore things completely different from what their major classes are. I remember my daughter needed a some kind of physical science requirement, and and I was like, "Oh, are you going to take golf or swimming?" And she says, "No, I'm going to take walking." And I'm thinking, I think you know how to do that already. But it's just an opportunity. Electives are a great way for you if you know you have a really crazy semester. It's a great way to kind of fill in those hours with something that maybe won't be as demanding. But it's also an opportunity to explore something completely different, completely outside of your comfort zone. And I have had moms that I've worked with whose students have found a new passion or new excitement around something that they just kind of said, "Oh, I think I'll take this and see what it's like." So I would say really look into those electives and use that as an opportunity to explore.
And I will just add something there. I have two sons out of college now and one still in college, and my oldest son, and this speaks to extracurricular activities, and we know that some of the opportunities are going to be different this year. They might not all be in person, but I remember Josh as a freshman, like during that orientation week, some friends dragged him to a vocal music audition, you know, for the choral society and the a cappella groups, and he just went and he tried out, and anyway, he was a physics major, but his choral music groups were his love all through college. He ended up winning. He did not win a physics prize, but he won a music department prize. And now, you know, 3 years out of college, when there isn't a pandemic, he sings with two auditioned community choral groups, and it's one of the great joys of his life. And so we're so happy to see that for kind of a shy kid who, you know, it gave him a home and a family and a lifelong, you know, pleasure. So anyway, thank you. I think that's a neat thing. And electives, absolutely.
Yeah. And I would want to piggyback on that because I think that's a brilliant illustration of the power of being curious and doing something outside your comfort zone. One of the things that I tell my students and tell my own kids is look for diversity on the campus. Join groups of people that don't look like you, don't come from your own background. It is really a great opportunity not only to take courses and things that they're a little different than what you're used to, but also to connect with people who are as diverse as, you know, your institution is. Because I think a lot of times we kind of get, you know, put in our own little groups of people that we've always been friends with, and the world's a beautiful place. And this is a wonderful opportunity to start making connections with people that you don't normally connect with.
Nice.
Yeah, I love that. And some of the students, you know, if I could add, you know, that I work with, sometimes have some really unique interests, and sometimes feel a bit lost on campus if they don't see a particular, you know, already established club, you know, or a team or a group. So, you know, freshman year is a great opportunity to kind of work on some of those leadership skills and, you know, approach your student activities or student life office and say, "Hey, can I start a club? You know, there may be other people like me who have an interest in anime or in video games, or in animal, you know, pet club or Broadway." So, you know, to really explore, like we were mentioning, and be curious and be proud of your own interests, and, you know, and think about starting a club.
Nice. So let's pivot a little for a few minutes to COVID-19 and the whole pandemic situation. We don't have the answers. The schools certainly don't. There's so much uncertainty, but within that sort of atmosphere of uncertainty that we're all entering into, we're speaking right now to the moms and dads whose students, well, they may be on campus and we hope they'll get to stay. Some of them may be starting college online and staying at home. I wonder, though, you know, based on that, what do you think are some of the most important conversations parents and their students can be having now, sort of to prepare for this unusual college move-in day? And anyone can jump in.
I think one of the main things I would want to be talking to my kid about right now is if you don't feel well, to go get checked. Don't just assume it's a cold. Don't assume it's just the normal flu. Don't assume that you can sleep it off. If you have any symptoms at all, or if you're just not feeling quite right, to call your student health center and find out what the process is. And then as parents, I would say, you need to know that ahead of time. You need to know what is the school doing, what is the process for your students, so that if they're calling you saying, Mom, I really don't feel well, that, you know, one of you already know what the process is and what they should do.
I think that's good advice, even not in a pandemic. Helping students to understand that, they're not going to their pediatrician anymore. They kind of have to take ownership a little bit of their health. One of the conversations I personally have had with my son, my daughter is going to be a senior in college. She goes to a different institution. She's kind of knows the process, and it's a much smaller school. So I haven't done a lot of prepping with her, but with my son, because he's going to my institution, I know what we're expecting students to do. And so I've already talked to him about, there will be a mask requirement, interior buildings, in classrooms whenever social distancing cannot occur. And I'm going to expect him to follow the guidelines of the institution. And certainly there'll be times when he doesn't have to do some of these things if he's in the privacy of his own room. But he's got to realize that there's a bigger community that we're trying to protect, and that his choices individually can affect that. Mm-hmm. And I don't want anyone to get sick. I don't want anything to happen. And I want to minimize that as much as possible. And I want him to be a part of that overall goal.
Yeah, really, really good advice.
Mm-hmm.
I think my piece of advice for conversations to be having is about an area that can be really hard for parents sometimes, and the differences between high school and college, which revolves around communication, specifically communication from the college to their student who's enrolled, and mostly is 18, and in the college world, is considered an adult and is considered the primary receiver of information from the college. And particularly now, as information may be changing very quickly and very rapidly, as it is when your student enters college, any information from the college will go to your student. So that could be mail that's mailed home to the attention of your student. It could be emails will go to your student. And that's because of the FERPA law. And that can be hard for parents to, to hear and to accept sometimes. Well, hey, wait a minute, if I'm paying the bill, why do I not know, what's happening, and why aren't these emails coming to me? But there is an option for your student to waive their right to privacy for certain individuals that they name. And so this year may be a good year to have a conversation with your son or daughter about waiving their rights so that you can receive some communication from the college.
Deborah just wrote about that in a piece for Collegiate Parent.
I was just going to say, I just included that in a piece that I wrote. And my suggestion there would be to get them to sign that form before they leave home. I just think it's we have 3, and we didn't realize this at the time. With the first one, it's always an experiment. So we didn't realize until she was already there that we needed that. And it was a little harder to get her to, to nail her down. And she was really enjoying the whole I'm an adult now thing. So I would just suggest, in addition to what Jen just offered, just do that before they leave. That way, that's one less thing you're having to remind them about and stay on them about. Just get that done before they head out.
Yeah, and there are, sometimes it's a written form. Deborah has experienced that, and sometimes there's electronic version, and so every school's a little bit different, and you usually can find that information, I think, through the registrar's office. Is that right, Amy?
Yeah, and I would also add to that be patient with people that you come in contact with who don't have access to that FERPA just yet. So it's not like there's a universal portal which we can all see that your student signed off on this. So sometimes parents will contact me directly, and I will say, I'll be glad to talk to you once I get a sense, know that your son or daughter has signed this. And they'll always tell me, oh, they have, and I believe them. But I also have to follow the letter of the law and have to confirm that. And so just being a little bit patient with people who don't necessarily always have direct access to that information could be really helpful, because we do want to help parents, that we do not want to keep anything from them, but we also want to do it in the appropriate way that benefits both the student and the family.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate that. Deborah, I'm going to come back to you. And having guided 3 children through college and all the way through, I was wondering if you'd share a couple of the things that you'd figured out by senior year that you wish you'd known as a freshman parent.
One of the first things I wish I had known as a freshman parent was that we probably should explore some place other than the campus bookstore to purchase books. They are very expensive on campus, and even if your student buys them new and sells them back, you really only get a fraction of what you paid. But there are so many opportunities online. I don't even want to start naming places because I'll forget some, but there are so many different opportunities to buy used books online. There are opportunities on campus to buy used books. There may even be on campus, one of my kids had a student center that had an actual library of books from the previous semester, where literally they just checked the textbook out and returned it at the end of the semester. So don't assume that you have to buy everything and buy it new. You do not. And then I think the other thing that I would add to that is sometimes you have to celebrate a C. And this is hard for our A students who are used to nailing everything. We had one who was an A student in high school and got a C and literally called us hyperventilating because they couldn't even quite get out what had happened. And there are moments where they really do their best. And in high school, your best could maybe get you an A or B. Sometimes in college, depending on the subject, sometimes their best really is a C. And so there are moments where you're going to really need to cheer them on, congratulate them for persevering and pressing through. But sometimes a celebration for a C is warranted.
And I want to add to that that sometimes a D or F could mean different things. So I can see both extremes. Sometimes I'll have students who'll make a D or an F on a first assignment. I always tell my students, first year students, that that's very normal, because you're absolutely right, Deb, that transition from high school to college may be a big enough jump that a student is not, prepared to alter how they do things and study or complete assignments. So I'll have sometimes students who freak out when they make a D or an F at the beginning of the semester, and I guide them through, okay, it's not the end of the world. You're going to use that information. Whatever you didn't do the right way, let's figure out how to do it well the next time, and let's pull that grade up. Most first year faculty understand students are going to do that, and so they often build a course around that little hiccup, or give them an opportunity to drop a low test grade or something like that. The other extreme is students who don't even register that they made a D or an F on the first assignment, and they do it'll be fine, I'm not worried. And so it would be nice if they could find a healthy balance between those two things, which is, it's not high school where you might have a lot of homework points that can pull you up. You may have to start looking at what is left in the rest of the course and the percentages and the points available. And then you need to focus on, okay, if I make a D on an early assignment, I'll have to make an A or a B on the rest of those assignments to pull myself up to a B or a C or something like that. And when I tell students that you want to use that information then to figure out what your strategy is. But if you just think, no worries, or you have the opposite extreme, oh my God, I'm going to fail out completely. Neither one of those are pretty good strategies for, getting back on track.
And Amy, you've written a lot about how much professors really want their students to talk to them, whether they can come in person in office hours, or if it has to be a virtual meeting this fall, because the parents, of course the parents care, the professors care, and they want to see the students succeed. And if you want to say a few more words about that, because I think some students are very hesitant to talk to their professors.
They are, and some of it, students will tell me that they fear that they'll be judged, and that the professor will be mad at them for failing something. And I said, no, absolutely not. They are interested in you getting better. They may wonder what happened, but they certainly want to provide some strategies to help you get better. My daughter had an issue her junior year with that same thing, where she was failing some quizzes in a major class that she had. And she didn't want to go see the professor because she's afraid she'd get emotional. And I said, students cry in my office all the time. We've been there, done that. It is not a big deal. She's not going to think less of you because you're upset. In fact, I said, it might work in your favor a little bit to show that you really, really care about doing well. It wasn't for her so much the grade. It was that she felt like she wasn't mastering the material. And so I helped her try to focus on that versus what the grade potentially signified. And that's kind of what I would tell parents as well, is coach your student. If they have a situation like that, how to go talk to a professor, how to open up that conversation, because we do want to have them with our students. We want our students, if all of my students did well in my class, I would feel great. And I would do anything to help them if they came to me asking for it.
That's so nice. Well, as we wrap up, I would love to just hear any, final words of encouragement or advice for parents. And Jennifer, also, I always love, we'd love a little extra from you if you want to share some of the particular, support that you would provide to parents of students who with learning differences or who may be seeking accommodations heading to college. But again, we can, if you would like to start and let us know some of your final words of wisdom.
Sure. As Amy was speaking, it was, what the advice that I would give to students and parents, I really echo, what she shared. So particularly with students, with whether it's mental health challenges or physical or, learning differences, that self-advocacy in college is really key. And that starts with the decision whether to disclose that a student has a disability, or not. And it's a very personal decision. I find students sometimes feel labeled in high school or feel like that's their identity, maybe that they've taken on themselves, or they feel that a school, has put on them. And so college is really a chance to start over. But I would really encourage students to, to think seriously about disclosing and sharing that you have a disability, not only to the accessibility office on campus, but then also the next step to share that with your professors, as Amy was just talking about. And it does require a little bit of vulnerability from students and honesty in knowing that your mental health challenge or your disability may impact you academically. It may impact you in the residence hall. And so being honest about that and, and maybe practicing and role playing at home with your parents, how those conversations might go with your professor. And really, even writing some things down and kind of having them in your pocket or having them on your phone to self-advocate, for those accommodations in college, because, the accommodations process is a little bit different in college, and students are, going to take on that responsibility to make appointments, to, drop off documentation, to pick up accommodation letters, to then give those letters to their faculty and to have conversations. And then in a testing or an exam situation, to request to use those accommodations. So there are many more steps built in, and all of those steps need to be initiated by the student. So that would be, really my advice for students is to practice some of that self-advocacy at home. And then I'll finish up with, some advice for parents. I really like talking to parents about kind of their parenting style and thinking ahead about the type of parent that they want to be when their young adult goes off to college. I find so often, parents have this, and I do it myself with my two daughters, is a reactive parenting style where I send them to school and then I brace myself and I get ready for whatever comes down the road and I deal with it in that moment, which can be great, but I encourage parents to take a moment and to reflect before their child leaves, to think about some of those qualities that they would like to exhibit in themselves. Maybe there are some things that they would like to do differently and have a different kind of relationship with their child now that they're in college. And to think ahead about some of those situations before they happen. So to have more a proactive parenting style. But I have faith in this class of students and parents, and I think they've been through a lot in the last 6 months already, and I think that's really equipped them well to handle what's going to come next.
Right.
That was so good. I should have taken some notes. That was really good stuff. The other thing I would say, as a mom of 3 students that have graduated from college, I think one of the things that we had to agree early on was the understanding that there really is a letting go. As our kids get older, sometimes, we're holding on tighter when really we need to be kind of releasing them. And so I would really encourage parents to understand that, yes, you're used to seeing them every day and asking them how their day was. Well, that contact may be weekly now. It may not be, well, I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's not going to be appropriate to call them every day and ask them how their day was. And my husband and I, did this. And the really bad thing was that I was at home, he was at work. So he's thinking about the kid and calling, and then I'm thinking about the kid and calling. And finally our kid sat us down and was like, okay, guys, can we pick a day during the week that, I'll call you Sunday evening, but I got mom calling me, and then 2 hours later, dad, you're calling me. And so there really is a letting go. And ideally, this is happening during their high school years. So you're not like ripping a Band-Aid off, but ideally you're giving them the pieces of their life back as they're getting older, and as they're going through middle school and into high school, so that it doesn't become a shock for you as a parent. So, I would say, retire the helicopter parent. School's not going to let you kind of hover over and see what all is going on. The lawnmower parent that kind of mows all of the obstacles out the way. Those 2 types of parenting styles will really be in conflict with their development and with the things that we really want them to accomplish in college. So I would say begin the letting go process early, so that you get to get pieces of your life back. There's less day-to-day involvement for you, and that they're really leaving home feeling prepared, like they've got the tools that they need to succeed.
I think excellent advice from Jen and Deb. I would add to that, because both of them kind of touched on this in some way, is parenting a college student is a developmental process, just like a college student is going through a developmental process. And so don't forget that you're going to have to change how you do things. It's not the same as parenting a junior high student or a high school student. And so I think Jen talked about being proactive instead of reactive. So going ahead and thinking, what am I going to do this coming fall? How am I going to back away or let go, as Deb says? Whenever they start picking a major or a career path, how am I going to parent that? And how am I going to slowly give them their autonomy and help them build confidence? Because that's really what short circuits all of this, is when we get in front of them and start advocating on their behalf, it really does diminish their ability to develop some self-confidence in themselves. And that is something that we know we want them to have. And so it takes time. It takes time. So be patient.
This was wonderful. It was so nice to speak with each of you. Is there any last little nugget anyone wants to share? There's so much here. It's really rich. And even as someone, my youngest son is halfway through college, I'm still learning and absorbing because each of my children has been very different and has taken a different path, and they have different personalities. And so I feel like I've gleaned more today, even though I'm not a first-time parent. But anything else before we say goodbye?
I might add that through the joys and the successes and the celebrations or the tough times, for parents to reach out. We have 4 amazing professionals right now who are all excited and passionate about the transition to college, and would welcome conversations with families. Using CollegiateParent to and reading the articles and resources, reaching out to other families that you may already have, support systems that you have in place, or that you may meet or pass on move-in day. That you don't have to do it alone, and that there are lots of families and staff on college campuses who have done it before you and will walk alongside you, and just to reach out.
Yeah, and I would say, yeah, of course, we love to hear from you at CollegiateParent, and to have everyone sign up for our newsletter, and that's where you can encounter wonderful articles and advice from today's guests and many other contributors. But the Parent and Family Program Office at your child's college and university can always be a starting point. And CollegiateParent, I'm just realizing I didn't really introduce myself with this when we started, but we work with quite a few colleges and universities, and many of our contacts at those schools are in the Parent and Family Office. And they will often direct you to some other place, if you're looking for information, but you can always start with them. They're there to advocate for you. And because of privacy things, people can't always give you information about your student, but they can take your concerns and answer your questions. And there are so many people who really want to support parents and family members. And even if you can't come to campus this fall, if you're not invited to linger at move-in, or a family weekend is canceled, there are going to be virtual conversations and events for sure that are going to take the place of some of those on-campus events, and participate as much as you can. And then you learn more about your child's school, and you have really healthy outlets for your energy if you're looking to get involved. So it was so nice to see you all. I just love it. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks so much, and have a wonderful evening, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.